It was good, YouTube. This is Who's Like God, and I got a huge conviction, a huge impression to make this video to debunk the notion of Jesus being idolatry, the worship of Jesus Christ or Yeshua as the Son of God. Many people who only believe the Old Testament, only believe the Tanakh, say it's idolatry. But I'm going to explain in a very simple and concise way on how that is flawed, fundamentally flawed. The only way you come to the conclusion that Jesus is idolatry is if you view the New Testament by your own presupposition, by your own rejection. You view the New Testament and all Christians are all messianics by the view of your own rejection of Christ, and that's the lens you view the New Testament from. Because the New Testament condemns any idea of any man being exalted to godhood. We see this in the case of King Herod in the book of Acts, which means that any idol is explicitly condemned in the New Testament. Any idol, any image, any graven image, any human exalting himself to godhood, that is condemned explicitly in New Testament scriptures. So any man who exalts himself to godhood or is exalted to godhood, to the God level of the God of Israel, otherwise is condemned, whether it be any ancient pharaoh or Greek king or what have you. So the belief is, for the Christian side, the belief for the Christians of the Messianics is that while condemning anyone who exalts himself to godhood, God himself, Yahweh first, became human in the descendant of David by means of the incarnation and virgin birth. Very fundamental difference. All humans being exalted to godhood is condemned in the New Testament, but God himself first became man in the New Testament. That's what the belief is. So when you come and call us idolaters, what you're really doing is you're showing your hand, because you're viewing the New Testament. You're viewing the New Testament by your own rejection of Christ. Because once you reject Christ, then to you, that's just a man becoming God. So you're putting that back onto the New Testament believers when we reject any notion whatsoever. What I'm saying is, when you really study these things, we'll see how Hebraic the belief itself is. Because in the Hebrew scriptures, in the Tanakh, God is recorded as appearing as fire, appearing as, I believe, a cloud, and appearing as a man. God is able, in his infinite ability, to actually take the form of his creation when he interacts with us, so that we don't die when we see him. We can see this firmly in the Tanakh, and there's a myriad of ancient Israelite sources before the New Testament that recognize that as well. So Hebraically speaking, based on the Tanakh, the belief itself isn't idolatrous. The belief itself is very Hebraic, to believe in the same way God became flesh and God became visible, God too became visible again in the Messiah. What I'm trying to show is, when we're looking on a non-presuppositional lens, there's an even playing field. There's a level playing field when we see how Hebraic the belief system itself is. And from that foundation, we can dialogue and debate if Jesus was the Messiah. That's why I wish in modern Judaism or many modern Israelite camps that are Tanakh only, there was an outreach, there was an ecumenical outreach to those who believe in Christ, because we can determine how concretely Hebraic the belief system is. But the movement to actively reject Jews, reject Christians or Jews, African Israelites in the world, the effort to actually try to get them to stop believing in Christ is so demonic. And it's one of my most heartfelt prayers that they're not snatched out of the Lord's bosom. Because we can see how Hebraic the belief system is in the vindication of Christ from that layer. All that is to say, anyone who accuses the New Testament of being idolatrous is looking at it from their own presupposition, their own lens, their own bias. Because we reject any man who becoming God. We reject that concept entirely. No man can become God. Man is not God. God is not man. In his very nature, that is 100% true. But God is able to take the form of man, as we can see from the Hebrew scriptures, and that is what we believe happened in Jesus. You see what I'm saying? So while rejecting any man being adapted to that God level, again, we believe God, Yah, has become man in the descendant of David. This Israelite who really had this lineage, who was doing miracles in Israel out of his own power, as various New Testament and secular sources attest in the first century and afterward, that he was doing these things totally consistent with the law in his ministry. We believe by the vindication of the resurrection, this truly was God become flesh by means of the word, which appeared to the prophets visibly, Jeremiah and Samuel, as well in the Tanakh. So I want to put all of that out there. I made a video about 2 or 3 years ago when I first started my challenge, which gets really deep and really technical into how Jesus is not an idol, and those who follow Jesus are not idolaters. I recommend y'all check that out for the really intricate arguments. But a lot of this comes from a modern presupposition about God from modern Jews or modern Israelites, that the God is the Father only. God is only one in the Unitarian sense. So there is only the Father in the nature of God. But that is totally disconnected from what the scriptures actually teach when we look at the Hebrew scriptures and the angel of the Lord and the grammar that connects both of those, God and the angel of the Lord, with one identity, and many other things like that. Things the ancient Hebrews recognized in their records, various pseudographical texts and Dead Sea Scrolls from Qumran and writers in the Hellenistic diaspora, all of this stuff. So that is to say, people view from their modern idea that God is only one power, and they reject the New Testament. But scripturally speaking, Hebraically speaking, God has a hypostasis. God has a visible presence that manifests him so that we can interact with him. This is what ancient Israelites believed at first, before that idea sort of became rubbed out. So if this is the original idea, if God truly has a hypostasis, we're saying the hypostasis is Jesus Christ. The same one who appeared in the prophets, the same one who appeared throughout Israel's history, is Jesus Christ. You don't have to believe that, but that's a category. The argument is a category fulfillment of what was always acknowledged in the nature of God. I'm so passionate about this because there's so many arguments coming against Christ, but you have to understand, Jesus is an idol. It's never going to be an argument against the New Testament. That's never going to be an argument, because that's an argument of your own presupposition. If you want to see if Jesus is who he said he is, we can't believe that he's true and we can't believe that he's false coming into it. We have to follow the evidence to see if he's vindicated. You can't already believe Jesus is false if you're truly trying to be honest and see if he was who he said he was. So calling him an idol comes from your own presupposition, which is disconnected from ages and centuries of what ancient Hebrews believed in general and what the Christians believed from that foundation. I'm going to say it one more time until I get blue in the face. We condemn any man that's exalted to godhood. We believe, while condemning any man who is exalted to godhood, any man who claims to be God while being just a man, we believe that Yahweh himself first became man in the descendant of David, just like he did in the Tanakh. You have to engage with the belief itself, because when we see how that's consistent with the Torah and the Tanakh, then we can have the conversation on Jesus' messianic credentials. But to come in saying that it's idolatry is really a straw man argument of what we believe and what ancient Israelites believed as a whole, outside of the messianic trajectory. This is something I'm so passionate about, because I hate to see people leave Christ or renounce Christ based on faulty arguments, based on presupposition, based on own bias, based on own judgment, instead of evidential arguments, or at least contending with what the New Testament actually preaches. I pray all of you will be blessed in the Messiah, Jews and Gentiles. I see this really present in the black community through the Old Testament only camps, which are interacting with my stuff, which I appreciate. The only thing is, on a broader scale, many Jews and the Jewish diaspora reject Jesus, but it seems in many ways they keep to themselves. They try to deconvert Messianic Jews, but I do see, it does seem like there's a lot of push among the African Jews and African Israelites, many of whom embrace the Messiah, not only to try to get them to engage more with rabbinic customs that aren't their own, but also to try to get them away from Christ, try to deconvert them from believing in the Messiah based on their own presupposition, again, not realizing how Hebraic the New Testament actually is. The New Testament is more ancient Israelite thinking than modern Judaism, modern Hebrew Israelite camps, and I'll stand on that. I'll die on that hill. So it makes me so sad when people are persuaded out of their own ignorance, out of knowing Christ in general. But I see especially a push, I think, with black Israelites, black Jews in Africa, who various rabbis seem to come in and are trying to influence them in general, and rabbinic custom influence them away from Christ. And I see that as totally demonic. That's something I want to speak on as well. But y'all be blessed in the Most High. Y'all be blessed in the Messiah. Stand firm in the faith and the revelation of the Lord. Again, if you want to see a really technical breakdown on how this is an argument that is totally debunked, but what the New Testament actually teaches, and actually comparing what the New Testament teaches against the Tanakh versus your judgment about what the New Testament teaches, no, go right to the source. What does it say against the scriptural grid of the Hebrew scriptures? And you'll see how the belief system is vindicated. as a foundation for debating if Jesus was the Messiah or not. This is where the religious discussion needs to evolve to among people who don't believe, in my opinion. This rhetoric and this sensationalism needs to go away. So that's one point. Really break down what the New Testament actually teaches. Check out my video from a couple of years ago. Again, ancient Israelites, even apart from the Christians, were Binitarian and loosely Trinitarian, recognizing 2 and 3 powers in the nature of God. We need to get back to a point where we can recognize this as a foundation to this kind of debate. So y'all be blessed, man. I'm so passionate. My heart is so passionate about this subject. And I'll see you all in the next video. All right. Peace and blessings.